All right, whiskey freaks. Once again, I've got a breaking news story here in the whiskey world, and this one matters because once again, Sazerac just got even bigger. Folks, this one is something that actually hits a little bit close, or maybe a lot close to home for me, and not in like a metaphorical, bourbon is my love language kind of BS way. I'm talking like a physically close to home way. I've mentioned here on the podcast before how my in-laws live just a few miles from Garrard County Distilling Company, that new distillery that opened up a couple of years ago and subsequently shut down in Lancaster, Kentucky. It's in Garrard County, hence the name. When it opened up, I mentioned this too, I was fired up, guys. I'm talking like Christmas morning kind of fired up. Look, it was a shiny new distillery, had a great big footprint, and it's got this gorgeous campus. And I'm going to show you some photos of it on my Facebook and Instagram. Go over to Facebook and Instagram, Blind Tasting Podcast. And one of the coolest things about them was they had the Carrie Nation house on the property. And I'm talking about that Carrie Nation, the hatchet swinging face of prohibition. It's really a special kind of cool factor, guys. But now, Garrard County Distilling, it's in receivership, and that's not news. We've mentioned that before. But the big news? Sazerac. That Sazerac. They've just quietly stepped into the picture and taken over. Here's the short version of the story for you guys. Truist Bank, the main lender to Garrard County Distilling, they were owed roughly $27 million by Garrard County Distilling. The distillery didn't pay the money and went into receivership after opening up in January 2024. They ran into, we'll just call it financial chaos. I'm not going to get into what I think. The contractors that built the place filed liens against them. They had unpaid debts. I think they even had unpaid taxes, if I'm not mistaken. Total failure in leadership. And their first master distiller, Lisa Wicker, she was fired less than 2 weeks after being hired. And the founder, Ray Franklin, he just disappeared. It was messy. Understatement of the year, really. And now, according to court filings, Truist Bank sold all of its loans to a company called, and get this, guys, Tom Collins Distilling, LLC. And Tom Collins Distilling, it turns out, is owned by Sazerac. And Sazerac, this isn't rumor, guys. Sazerac has confirmed that. This is for real. Okay, Tom Collins Distilling may not be for real, but this story is for real. And then they did what Sazerac does best. They said, and I quote, "As a privately owned company, we cannot divulge further information." Translation, we ain't telling y'all squat. So you're like, Stark, who cares? Also, why does this matter? And those are both good questions, guys. Well, let's zoom out for a second. Sazerac's not some startup looking to dabble in bourbon. They own Buffalo Trace Distillery, home of Buffalo Trace, Blanton's, Weller, Eagle Rare, you know all the things, BTAC, all that good stuff, right? And look, before we act all shocked that Sazerac is circling another distillery, let's break this down, because this is not Sazerac's first rodeo. Keep in mind, this is the same company that bought Buffalo Trace Distillery back in the 90s, and they turned it into the most allocation-obsessed operation in all of America. They also acquired Barton 1792. They took over Glenmore Distillery. They bought A. Smith Bowman Distillery in Virginia. They picked up brands like Early Times and Canadian Mist from Brown-Forman. They've expanded into Ireland with Hawks Rock Distillery. They acquired Texas-based Western Sun Distillery. This is just what they do. They don't build hype, guys. They build infrastructure, and they buy when others stumble. That's exactly what happened here. They're not making small casual moves. And today, here, now, when Sazerac buys $27 million in debt on a brand new 50,000 square foot distillery sitting on 210 acres, they've got 18 fermenters, 3 rickhouses built at this point. It's not an accident. That's called positioning. So let me tell you about the distillery itself. What is and what was, I guess, Garrard County Distilling? Well, what it isn't, it's not a boutique pot still Instagram distillery with reclaimed barn wood and a pile of cats in the tasting room. That's not what Garrard County was created to be. The place was built for volume. They've got, like I said, 18 fermenters, 3 rickhouses already built. They've got roughly at least, and I think it's actually more, but there's news that I learned about. I think it's actually more, but we know for sure they have about 17,000 sourced barrels already aging on site, and they have the ability for high capacity production. This place, it's got 2 45-foot tall, 36-inch Vendome copper column stills that are capable of producing, this is staggering, up to 8.5 million proof gallons. And in English, that means they can produce 150,000 barrels of whiskey a year. Guys, that's wicked big. This is industrial scale capability. And it sits just about 30 minutes south of Lexington, Kentucky. It's right off the beaten path there, but it's not too far from major bourbon tourism corridors. It's not too far from Lawrenceburg, and it's really not too far from Wilderness Trail there in Danville either. Now, when it opened, I remember thinking, this is going to be sweet. I mean, especially because of the land that they have there. It's near, like I said, it's near family, really. The whole history shtick they have there with Carrie Nation. They actually put Carrie Nation's home. They relocated it from another part of Garrard County. They put it on the distillery site. I didn't get to see it because they closed down when I went to see it. The gate was locked. Anyway, that Carrie Nation shtick is just storytelling gold. And you got to have a good story in the bourbon world, right? Guys, the boom years created a lot of new distilleries, like fast. Some were built on solid footing, and others, like Garrard County Distilling, they were built on, we'll call it optimism, and a whole lot of borrowed money. So I guess the biggest question is, what does Sazerac do with the distillery in this 210-acre property, along with that Carrie Nation house? Now, here's where I'm only able to speculate because, like I said, Sazerac is being pretty tight-lipped about it. They are saying nothing at this point, and it's only like 2 days after this announcement, right? Well, I think there are 3 or 4 options, and option 1 to me is they use it for production overflow. Buffalo Trace demand is still insane, guys. I know even with their expansions underway, you can't age bourbon overnight. So if Sazerac can use Garrard County's capacity to quietly lay down more barrels, I think that's future-proofing, and that's no pun intended. Or maybe, I think option 2, contract distilling, but under their direct control. So instead of outside companies using Garrard County for contract production, Sazerac could actually use it to produce juice for smaller labels they already own or plan to launch. White label strategy, private blends, international brands, they've got flexibility here for sure. And maybe another option would be a new premium campus. This would be my choice if I was running the show or if I could make the decision. They could turn it into a specialty production site. Limited mash bills, they could do experimental warehousing, maybe even a future tourist destination on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail tied to that whole Carrie Nation story that I think is fantastic. And wouldn't that be an ironic play, right? The house of a prohibition icon sitting on property owned by one of now the biggest spirits companies in the world. I mean, that would be potentially marketing dynamite. And my last guess or idea for this site, option 4, barrel warehousing expansion. They could simply just use it if they don't ramp up production immediately on this site. They could use the existing rickhouses. They can use the acreage here. That acreage is valuable. And in the bourbon world, that real estate, That's important. So I think they could use it just simply to build more rick houses and to age and store whiskey. I'll be honest, guys. When Garrard County first opened, I was truly excited, genuinely excited. And I don't mean that just because I love new distilleries, but because every time we visited my in-laws, I'd drive past that property and think, dude, this is going to be something great. It had the look, the scale. I'm gonna show you some pictures. I've got some photos that I got from Garrard County Distilling. I'm gonna put them on my Facebook and Instagram. Take a look to see. It's a beautiful place, and it had that really super cool historical layer about it that the bourbon world thrives on. That story. I know nowadays, I've mentioned this before, especially for new whiskey lovers, it's often the story that'll draw you in, and then good bourbon will just keep you coming back for more. To see Garrard County Distilling fail so quickly was disappointing, to say the least. But now, seeing Sazerac step in, maybe that changes the story. We've got some promise now, maybe some hope, or I don't know if you'll call it the cavalry coming in, but I think it's good news at the very least. Look, if there's one company, one entity, one giant 400-year-old liquor titan that knows how to play the long game in bourbon, it's Sazerac. So, what does this mean for us whiskey freaks? Well, I believe if Sazerac ultimately takes control, this facility likely won't sit idle forever. They're going to use it for something. The infrastructure is just too damn valuable there. The real question is whether it becomes a hidden workhorse behind the curtain or the next whiskey you're fighting over in the parking lot in 5 or 6 years. Either way, guys, keep an eye on it. I'll keep an eye on it as always. Sometimes in bourbon, in the whiskey world, the most interesting moves aren't the big flashy ribbon cutting ceremonies. They're the quiet $27 million chess moves by Sazerac in Garrard County. And if this thing ends up producing future Buffalo Trace mash bills or experimental Weller variants or some entirely new brand we haven't even heard of yet, you heard it here first on the Blind Tasting Podcast. And next time I'm driving past my in-laws' place, I might just be looking at the future of Sazerac's next chapter. I'm actually going to swing by there next time we head down there and see if I can get in to the property legally and maybe take some pictures, but I may not be able to. If I hear anything else, y'all, you can be sure I'll put something out here on the pod, and I'll get you all caught up. Well, that's it for today, Whiskey Freaks. I just wanted to hit you with this breaking news. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, all the places so you don't miss out when I drop some hot whiskey news just like this. Well, thanks as always for listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your #1 attitudinal bourbon destination.